Town Council of the Town of Evansville. May I have a roll call, please?
Mayor Jennifer Sorensen.
Here.
Councilmember Chad Edwards.
Here.
Councilmember Joseph.
Here.
Councilmember Aaron Bennell.
Here.
Councilmember Sheena Hickson. Here. Town Attorney Kyle Ridgway.
Here.
Town Treasurer Alexi Erickson is to be excused tonight. Chief of Police Mike Thompson.
Here.
Fire Chief Leo Lawson.
Here.
Public Works Director Dr. Ron Emmett.
Here.
Town Clerk Janelle.
And
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, in liberty and justice for all.
I have a motion to approve the agenda with adding items A through E under the consent agenda and changing items 13 and 14 around.
Second.
Second discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 1, consent agenda. I have a motion to approve the consent agenda on
So moved.
second discussion. Questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 2, Resolution 3-2020, a resolution setting the water fill station fees.
Madam Mayor and Council, brought before you tonight is a resolution establishing the rates for the water fill station and fire hydrant meter usage. This resolution is being presented to you tonight for approval with the changes that we are making with the water fill station. Currently, the water fill station is $7 per 1,000 gallons and $10 per 1,000 gallons. I'm sorry, $7 per 1,000 gallons for residential use, $10 per 1,000 gallons for commercial use. Once the new fill station is set up, the customer will be making that selection, whether they're residential or commercial. And so what we need to do at this point is just set a flat fee regardless of the type of user you are. And I utilized, if anybody wants to change that rate.
Do we know the breakdown between current usage, residential versus commercial?
I do not.
Thoughts?
I don't think use it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm okay with the $10 just because it's a new system. We're experimenting into it. That cost and maintenance on it. I think a little bit newer. Different maintenance, I guess. Okay. Alright, so we have a motion to approve resolution 3-2020, resolution setting the water fill station fees.
So moved. Second.
Second discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Alright. Oh, no, you know what? Sorry.
Thanks, Chief.
All out of sorts. Sorry.
We are.
All right, resolution 4-2020, resolution restricting COVID-19.
And Mayor and Council, brought before you tonight is resolution 4-2020. This is a resolution restricting door-to-door sales during the COVID-19 pandemic. Last week, I believe it is, Chief Thompson had to stop and speak to an individual that was going door-to-door selling Spectrum. And my understanding also is there has been somebody going door-to-door trying to sell Kirby vacuum cleaners. Mike did have and shut her down for the day. And I spoke to her later on that day and told her that I didn't think that it was right going door to door right now with this pandemic. I did go ahead and forward over the information to her boss, and I have not heard back from them. And in the meantime, I talked with Kyle, and it states in the town ordinances that the chief of police can deny approval of door-to-door solicitation if there is a safety issue for the general public. So that is what we're presenting before you tonight for approval.
Discussion, questions?
So is it an ordinance, just to put a restriction in place?
Yeah, just during COVID-19.
A resolution.
It's a resolution, just
Just,
during the pandemic.
Yeah, all we're doing is, in the ordinance itself, the chief of police can either freeze or deny licensure for door-to-door solicitation. for the general health, safety, and welfare of the community. And so the resolution is just to put a freeze on, it's basically to sort of bless from the council the chief's recommendation that we stay all that licensure basically through the pandemic, which is until these executive orders from Governor Gordon start getting walked back. So at some point when we get to the place where the chief thinks it's reasonable to allow door-to-door solicitation again based on the guidance we're getting from health officials, we come back to the council to basically repeal the resolution.
Yeah, we had the Kirby lady come to our house, and it totally defeats the purpose of people trying to stay home, social distancing. I mean, you're going home to home to home to home to home. It just might as well be back in school.
I have a motion to approve resolution 4-2020, a resolution restricting door-to-door sales during COVID-19. Second discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, item 4, ordinance 3-2020, ordinance to amend water rates to be amended, third and final.
Madam Mayor, Council, before you tonight is ordinance 3-2020. This is an ordinance to amend the water rates. It was passed on first reading the 10th of February, second reading the 24th of February. And because we have not had any meetings during the month of March, those rates would have gone into effect April 1st. And so I just asked that the ordinance be amended tonight to where the rates go into effect May 1st and then brought before you tonight on third and final reading.
I have a motion to approve 3-2020, ordinance to amend water rates to be amended, start date of May 1st. Second discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Item 5, ordinance 4-2020, an ordinance to amend sewer rates to be amended.
Madam Mayor and Council, brought before you tonight is ordinance 4-2020. This is an ordinance to amend the sewer rates. It was brought before you for first reading and approved on the 10th of February 2020, and again on second reading the 24th of February 2020. I asked that it be amended because the ordinance was set to go into effect April 1, 2020, and because we have not had a council meeting. I'm asking that it be amended so that the rates would go into effect May 1st, 2020. As for approval on third and final reading, that's amended.
I have a motion to approve ordinance 4-2020, ordinance to amend sewer rates to be amended to start date of May 1st on third and final reading.
So moved. Second.
Discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Item 6, 5-2020, ordinance to amend sanitation rates.
Madam Mayor and Council, brought before you tonight is an ordinance to amend sanitation rates. It was passed on first reading the 10th of February 2020, passed on second reading the 24th of February 2020. It was set to have the rate increase take effect April 1st, and because we had not had a council meeting in March, we've changed that date to have those rates go into effect May 1st, and I just ask that you approve it tonight on third and final reading as amended.
I have a motion to approve 5-2020, an ordinance to amend sanitation rates to be amended for start date May 1st on third and final.
So moved. Second.
Second discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Item 7, ordinance 6-2020, ordinance to amend the employee handbook on first reading.
Madam Mayor and Council, brought before you tonight is ordinance 6-2020, this is amending the Evansville Employee Handbook to add factorization policy governing employees and town officials. Brought before you tonight on first reading. And if you have any questions, Town Attorney Kyle Ridgway can probably answer those questions.
I kind of guess I'm not understanding that fraternize, so what would this entail?
Well, you could call it a romance in the workplace policy instead of fraternization, but you use the word fraternization. But what it's designed to do is prevent conflicts of interest and give guidance in advance where you have relationships between employees or superiors with an employee or a supervisor with an employee. And so what this policy makes clear, and it would go all the way to council members. So what it makes clear is if you've got a council member that has a romantic relationship with a town employee, that the council member is not supposed to participate in decisions related to anything to do with that employee. Same would go for, you know, if you had a supervisor and there was a romantic relationship, they're not supposed to occur. But if they do occur or they pre-exist, that this is how that policy deals with it. So we're just putting some guidance in place to avoid conflicts of interest and to make it clear that the town has a policy, so folks can excuse themselves if they have some sort of romantic relationship or otherwise with the town employee.
So would they be not allowed to even, say if it wasn't a council member, they wouldn't even be allowed to vote on that, anything to do with that department? Because it would also,
If it has to do with the particular employee. So what this is really designed to do is deal with employee discipline type issues. So what we're trying to prevent is a situation where you might have a supervisor that would want to terminate an employee or put something in an employee's file, but somebody over here who has a romantic relationship that might be above the individual that's wanting to mete out discipline step in and try to prevent that from occurring. It makes it clear that that would be a violation of the policy. Or if you have a supervisor that has a relationship with an employee, then we would have to find some other person in the town to deal with that situation, whatever the employment issue might be.
now my next question is, did we have some kind of an issue that this came up, that we have to do this? I mean,
Yes, my recommendation is that we need to have this policy.
because we never had that problem before, so, you know. I figured
Yes,
somebody must have said something, so there was.
We have at least one situation where this is a policy that we would want to have in place. I think folks are currently abiding by the policy as though it exists, but it's not necessarily clear in the employee handbook. And then I just thought it was prudent to extend it all the way up to town council members, which is why we're doing it in the form of an ordinance instead of just doing it in the handbook. Because it should apply to town council members. You shouldn't be interfering in employee situations where you might have some sort of personal relationship with the individual that would bias you or make it inappropriate for you to make decisions on, you know, something to do with their employment individual. And that could be as much as if we're talking about a raise for one particular person or something. But yes, we have at least one situation where this would be an ordinance that it would be good to have in place for the town.
I was just curious because I know when I was on the fire department, I kind of had to leave the fire department because that was conflict of interest because I couldn't vote on anything to do with the fire department.
And I think that's what we're kind of getting at, because it's a small town. I mean, there's a chance that people could be employed by the town of Evansville and live in the town of Evansville, and the spouse could decide to, you know, be on council or something like that. And it's to just set that line there that it's not to say it can't be a thing. It's just there has to be a area. You know, you got to say, hey, I have to separate myself from this, you know, whatever the issues may be.
Right, and so what it would be is if you had a spouse or if you had somebody who works in the fire department, but their spouse happens to be on the town council, and that individual maybe should, what the ordinance would say, individual should refrain from making decisions that would affect that particular department or how that would work. And so all you're doing is excusing yourself from that particular piece of your role on the council while still serving in the rest of it. And then it allows the employee to keep doing their duty. And so by having it as an ordinance, it makes it easier not just for you all, but any town council in the future. You're now adopting basically a conflict of interest policy that deals with romantic relationships specifically, but it's broader than that. And it also deals with sexual harassment and other kinds of things. And so it's just a prudent policy for you to have in the future because you can go back to it if it's in an ordinance. So it gives a club to other council members. If somebody's doing something they're not supposed to do, you can actually use the ordinance as a means to remove somebody or something else if it turns out that there's something going on there that shouldn't be occurring. It's not just we're going to look down our nose at this or we feel like this isn't what should happen. We've actually got it codified as to how that's supposed to work. So it's a mechanism and a process so the town can still make those decisions appropriately And it gives clear guidance to individuals who might have a conflict of interest as to how they're supposed to handle that.
And this is gonna correct whoever had the problem in the first place, it's gonna correct their problem as well.
I don't know if there's anything that needs correcting currently. The point is it gives guidance if something were to come up because of these types of situations, how they're supposed to be handled in the future. If there's a situation where you had a superior who could interfere with an employment decision or something because they had a romantic relationship with an employee, this just gives clear guidance as to how that's supposed to be handled. So it's better to have it now because we don't have a problem we have to correct, instead of trying to adopt it to correct the problem.
Okay.
Questions?
It just seems like a good boundary for a dual relationship, because you can't make an ethical decision from a certain standpoint if you have a dual relationship with an effective employee.
Oh, yeah, no, I think it's a good thing to have, and I think, like I said, it's a small town, and it's the 21st century, there's a good chance that there could be an employee that's maybe a council member, or whatever the case may be, and you don't want to put yourself, it's, you can think, okay, hey, I need to abstain from this, but if it's in writing in front of you, hey, if you're, got a spouse that's on the fire department, you're not, in budgets, you're not going to be voting on raises or anything like that. It just sets that out, same thing with police department or public works or anything, it keeps that separate.
I do have a question. What if people who could be seen as favored, basically like, for example, if Leo's son started working on the fire department, does this cover that same kind of relationship?
So this is mostly designed to deal with romantic or dating relationships, but I think in the employee handbook, there is stuff related to family relationships that is covered. And so we don't have that in this particular ordinance, but the employee handbook has that covered already.
Yes.
I have a motion to approve ordinance 6-2020, and ordinance to amend the employee handbook on first reading.
Second.
Second discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Item 8, ordinance 7-2020, and ordinance adopting animal control regulations on first reading.
Madam Mayor and Council, brought before you tonight is ordinance 7-2020. This is an ordinance establishing animal control. Chief Thompson has prepared an entire chapter of proposals on animal control, ranging from, if you have any questions or comments, he would be the one to speak to on it, or perhaps Town Attorney Kyle Ridgway.
Questions, comments? Chat over there.
Sorry.
You're.
It's a lot to read. I've reviewed it before, just again. I think it's a good basis to get going. One of the things that I had concern with in the beginning was how we deal with cats. I know the ordinance are roaming the animal, so I don't want to spend a lot of time with animal control when we're not trying to hurt cats. So I tend to kind of work on the eating side. On the end, the catch and release policy, I think really helps to address that, where community cats, as it's put in the ordinance, would be caught, spayed, tagged, and released. So I think that helps to keep under control of that cat population.
Anyways. Any questions, comments? This is first reading, so.
Well, if they're gonna neuter them, they might as well come and neuter mine right away.
Look at you.
You have the opportunity to do that.
But not the funds. And now I'm down to one, because one of them disappeared. Nobody will tell me if they see.
There are as you guys, it might be good for a second reading, specific things that the chief is pointing the governing body to, related to things like animal exhibitions, rabbits, yeah. What your thoughts are related to whether you want to dictate any living condition standards for rabbits. One of the other ones he had in here was if you want to add a permitting requirement for circuses or petting zoos. So it might be, what we probably can do for second reading is email some of these prior to the council meeting, so that for second reading you can give some more thought to whether there are some specific questions where some input might be needed from the town council. Okay.
I got a petting circus at my house. And so,
It'll be all right. All right, so ordinance 7-2020, ordinance adopting animal control regulations on first reading. We have a motion to approve. Second discussion. All in favor, say aye.
I,
Okay. Item 9, memorandum of understanding with the town of Mills and animal services.
Madam Mayor and Council, brought before you tonight is memorandum of understanding. It's animal shelter and holding memorandum of understanding between Evansville and the town of Mills, Wyoming. I don't know if Chief Thompson or Attorney Kyle Ridgway have any comments in regards to this memorandum of understanding.
So going back to our pulling away from Metro, starting our own, this is part of that process because we don't have our own facility to hold these animals. Mills and us, we talked about partnering with their facility. So the MOU with Mills is that, understanding that when we catch somebody's dog that's running loose in Evansville, we'll use their facility to hold the dog until the owner's found or gets it. So through the MOU, kind of spells out the legalities of it, what we do, what they do, the fees. So Mills, essentially the payment in lieu of using their facility would be any of the kennel fees and stuff. They've requested they keep those fees. I think that's pretty reasonable for not having our own facility. The fees are then set by Evansville, which is you, the governing body. And so this is just kind of that agreement. And Attorney Ridgway put in some liability factors and stuff. This has been through their attorney and our town attorney as presented to you now.
This is the one we'll send back. But most of the additions are just kind of add some clarification. So the idea is the kennel fees that you guys have in the ordinance, you can collect from the individual owner, either Mills or Evansville, but Mills is entitled to that fee for housing the animal. If the fee is not collected from the owner, then the minimum fee paid by the town for the animal being housed is $10 per day to Mills. Or the $10 per stay. $10 per stay, correct. And so the minimum fee for each animal is going to be $10. And if we're able to collect those fees from the owners, then we pay more, but it's from the owner. But if we have a bunch of animals that we're not actually getting recouped the cost from the owners, then it's just $10 for each animal. And I think that economics of that worked out based on the amount of animals we've historically had that Metro's dealt with.
Okay, so I guess I need a motion to send this back to Mills. Second discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. Motion carries. Item 10, memorandum of understanding with the Casper Humane Society and Animal Services.
Madam Mayor and Council, brought before you tonight is the management agreement, and this would be between, for the Evansville Animal Control Facility, and this would be between the town of Evansville and the Casper Humane Society. Again, I would entertain comments from Chief Thompson or Town Attorney Kyle Ridgway in regards to this MOU.
So this is the one other part to this project we've taken on. Using the Mills facility, should we have an animal that we catch in our jurisdiction and is being housed over there, this agreement is consistent with what the town of Mills is doing, where the Humane Society's people, their volunteers, are then going to that facility. They take care of the animals, they're cleaning up the stalls, they're feeding them, and that kind of stuff over there. So we essentially took what Mills and the Humane Society did. We now have our own with them because there are animals that they'll be taking care of for us once they're secured over there. And then Attorney Ridgway added a few more portions of this that he felt needed to be added into it.
So basically, it's a year-to-year agreement. You pay $15,000 and split into payments every 6 months. And then they run the facility, take care of the animals. There are some other fees in here where if they've got direct expenses, we'll reimburse them for direct expenses if that's providing food or veterinary care, things like that. For any, what I would call lost or abandoned animal that's been there for 5 days, the Humane Society takes custody of the animal after that. Basically shelters it, neuters it, and puts it up for adoption. If we have animals like will be a vicious animal or there's some reason it's got to be held for longer than 5 days, then the Humane Society will take the animal. That stays because it'll be subject to a criminal proceeding. So in your ordinances, you've got a process to follow for vicious animals and that kind of thing. So not every animal after 5 days is going to be remitted to the Humane Society, but many are, and they will then facilitate either reuniting it to the owner or whatever. But in the meantime, the animal gets spayed or neutered, and the Humane Society, we pay that cost for the care to get it to the Humane Society. And then from there, it's them running it. So it sort of makes sure that, you know, the facility is being run and the animals are being cared for in a caring and compassionate manner. And then that's all being delegated to them under this contract.
Questions?
That's just a long way, I gotta go out and get my cat.
So I don't know what to tell you, man. Your cats like to have fun, right?
They do.
Okay, so they have a motion to send the memorandum of understanding back to the Casper Humane Society. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Okay, who would be in charge of, like registering or, like, you know, how you can have tags on animals if they get lost? Who would be in charge of managing that? And would that be the Humane Society?
That-
Microchipping?
That'll all fall within the police department. So starting next week or this week, correct me myself here, we're going to advertise to hire a animal control / community service position. So they're going to be having that responsibility. The records clerk in the police department and the upstairs ladies, should they want to, can issue out registrations when people come in. And
Any questions? Okay. Motion to send the memorandum of understanding back to the Casper Humane Society.
So moved.
Sorry.
Discussion. Fair say aye? Okay. Item 11, approval to advertise purchase of animal control truck and purchase animal control equipment. And I understand this is advertised of a purchase to bid or used, correct? Is that how I'm understanding it, Chief?
so it's a two-part thing here. Let's address the first part, animal control truck. So when we talked about pulling away from Metro, starting our own facilities, we originally had a different vehicle planned to purchase. That didn't come about. Things changed. So I went back to the drawing board and we could order a new truck. which is about the same as you saw in the email I put out that had the different used vehicles. The problem is the time frame. If we're going to take over animal control for the town July 1, we have to have a vehicle that's equipped and ready to go. So because of the COVID-19 and the delays, we would not have a vehicle. So that leaves us two options. There's the used vehicle options. I sent out an email that had some examples. The second one is Councilman Edwards talked to me about and concerned of could we just bid one that's on a lot and would we get the same discount? So I talked to one of the dealers. Those same discounts that are given to government entities would also apply to vehicles on the lot. So the discussion tonight is about do you want to bid one that's on a lot, and I have an example for you, or go with a used one. So the used one, if it stays under $35,000, if I remember correctly, does not have to be bid by state statute, where if it's a new one or over $35,000, it has to be bid. If we bid one that's on a lot, we're talking about 3 to 4 week time frame, the time it's advertised, and then we accept it. So we would be able to secure that vehicle before July 1. With that, there's the second part of this, which is the slide-in animal housing portion of things, and it'll take 6 weeks to build once we order that. So we have to decide which vehicle we want to start with so that I know the length of the bed to give to that in particular manufacturer to say we want this particular unit, and then have it delivered to us so that we can have it ready for July 1. The hiring time frame I'm looking at, once I advertise this position starting this week, we'll secure applications deadline May 5th, but I'd like to have somebody hired either end of May to the first part of June so that they can have some training before July 1 moving into that position. Councilman Edwards, so in following up with when he talked to me a little bit, this particular vehicle, I have a picture here I could bring up if you want. I talked to one dealer and I said, hey, what do you have on the lot that would fit in this realm? So he sent back 4 or 5 different particular colors. The one thing that it doesn't have that I need to inquire about is trying to get an adjustable seat. I think that's an important thing for somebody to have. But it's only about $4,500 more to bid new on lot versus buying one of the used ones under $35,000. It has 55 to 60,000 miles on it.
That was a major concern of mine going on, is to spend the same amount, if not more money, for a used vehicle that had 50 to 60,000 miles. I agree. It means we'll be replacing sooner.
Okay, so direction of the council is to bid on lot, new on lot. Okay. So do I need to create a motion to put out a bid?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a motion to put out a bid for a truck. Second discussion. There's the aye.
The second part to number 11, by the town ordinance, anything that's not budgeted over $1,000 has to be approved by the governing body. So essentially we're asking for approval in starting up our own animal control community service. There's equipment required beyond just the vehicle, such as catch poles, gloves. They're going to need their own computer for the dispatch and to do reports on things like that. And then, of course, the slide-in box portion of it. So because it's not a budgeted item, I would need your approval to expend those monies. The equipment outside the slide-in box is going to be just shy of about $8,300, and the slide-in box, I don't see us going much more than about $7,000 when they add the internal lights and the backup lights on it. So at this point, I'm asking for your approval to order that equipment.
So that's 15,300. This council, would you like 16,000 per cap?
Right about that.
So I think it's 11 item A. That work? Okay, so 11 item A, I have a motion to approve additional expenditures for the police department to $16,000 for purchasing patrol equipment. Is there discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Carried. Item 12, discussion to repair or replace patrol unit. We need a motion on what we're doing with that.
Back in a workshop, was it like late February, if I remember correctly, I brought up one of our patrol units that has a steering column issue. It's about $2,500 to replace. In the discussion, we talked about just replacing it and bidding it out, which was on the agenda for the last meeting it was canceled. So again, it's back in front of you. Should you decide to want to do that, we'll need approval to bid that out. And or we can spend the $2,500 to fix it.
If I recall, we were talking about doing that, putting it on the loan payment plan and then incorporating that into this next year's budget.
Correct.
Yes. So using the vehicle for trade. So we have a motion to place a bid for the second discussion. All in favor, say aye. Okay, flip flop here. Refuse to certified letter.
So on the 24th of February, after discussion with the mayor and town council on the business license with Right Way Roofing, we've had problems with this contractor performing work without pulling any zoning certificates or building permits with the Natrona County Building Department. And so at the February 24th council meeting, the motion was made to suspend this business license and send out a certified letter to the contractor, letting him know to come to the next council meeting with the possibility of his license being revoked. He refused to pick up the certified letter. Since then, we have had problems with him again out here doing work over on Platte Park Road. Ron had to go and shut him down. We now suspect that he is doing work under another contractor and has not gotten his inspections on one particular address. And so it's just brought before you tonight to revoke this business license for Right Way Roofing.
Any other, what are our other options? I mean, after this, if it continues,
You could prosecute, he could be prosecuted criminally in the town. Or we could obtain an injunction from the district court if need be, which would be a court order from the court in Natrona County that he cannot continue to do this if we had to elevate it to that. So on the most recent one that Ron had been shut it down on, I actually was able to talk to his attorney and gave her the letter and explained the statutory scheme in Evansville and that he doesn't have a license from the county. Because he doesn't have a license from the county, that means he can't perform any work in Evansville. And that was made abundantly clear to his counsel. And then since then, at least on that particular job, he has tried to get somebody to replace him, which is the business license we're going to discuss next. But at least for his particular license, by now revoking it, we know he has actual notice through his attorney of the suspension. And he's taken actions he shouldn't have taken since. And it's my understanding from talking to the county that it's unlikely he would probably ever be granted a license from them. So by revoking it, you then put it in the hands of of Ron and the chief of police to decide if he does it again, whether he's gonna be cited, and what level to elevate it at that point to get him to stop working in Evansville.
Okay. I guess we make a motion to revoke business license, right? Roofing.
Seconded.
Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Is that George or something?
All right, back to item 13, approval of business license RS Home Improvements.
So Madam Mayor, Council brought before you tonight is a business license application from RS Home Improvements. It appears to several of us that this is a front for Right Way Roofing. And when Right Way Roofing was removed from doing the job at 613 Platt Park Road, a day or two later, approved, it appeared to be the same vehicles, the same people that were doing the work at 613 Platt Park Road. I reiterated several times with the Randall Sargent, who is the owner of RS Home Improvements, as well as his office staff, making sure that this is work that's being done by his business and not a front for Right Way Roofing. They assured me that it was not Right Way Roofing, that they may be taking Right Way Roofing's business over. Received a phone call last week from Jason Gutierrez, the Charman County building official, and the work that was done over at 613 Platt Park Road was never inspected. The department has at least 2 inspections. Once is an inspection that inspects the decking, once all the material was stripped off, and then a final inspection. There was no inspections done. I spoke with RS Home Improvements. She told me, the girl that I talked to told me that City of Castle hire any inspections. They won't get up on the roof, therefore they didn't call for an inspection. I asked her, have you not done re-roofs in Natrona County, issued by Natrona County Building Department? And she said yes. And I said, Natrona County Building Department issues the building permits for us as well. There's no difference. So Jason Gutierrez was going to try and get a letter written to you guys, his concerns, but he has been putting out fires left and right, hasn't gotten a letter to us. So I'm just bringing it before you guys to see how you want to handle the issuance of trail.
So is the owner of Platt Park, are they kind of in the same situation as our original owner now with not having the inspections done on the roof?
Yep.
Okay. I guess my thoughts is we don't approve it. If they're contractors and they've done work in Natrona County, they know how it works. They know what they need to do, and they blatantly didn't do it, even with our communications.
And this contractor has been at least filed with the Secretary of State on September 9th of 2015. So it's not like he just became a licensed contractor in the last year. He's been doing it for a while.
And I don't want to put any other residents in the town of Evansville in the same situation like that now, too, for citizens. That's my take.
Yeah, I agree. It's ridiculous. I feel terrible for those people that have all the issues.
Okay. So, a motion to deny business license for RS Home Improvements. So, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
When I did my own home, I called from my expected.
Okay. And 15, public comments. Any public comments from our audience listening out there? Public comments, any public comments? I'll hear it, maybe. If anybody's watching, 234-6530. I'll get you in. For any public comments. Okay. Public comment session closed. A motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor, say aye. That's right.
So there was 10 council watching.
Okay.
So 1, 2, 8.
That's more than I thought.
More than usual.
Yeah. And people can always like submit like a question